Hello and welcome to today's Aviation Week webinar, MES Strategies for Empowering High-Skill Assembly Operators, sponsored by Velotic. I'm Mike McCleary and I'll be moderating today's event. We have a few housekeeping items before we begin. The first is that we designed the webinar to be interactive. So the remote control of widgets to the right of your screen is where you can learn about today's speakers, download resources, and participate in the Q&A. Also, your slides will advance automatically throughout the event. If you experience trouble with your audio or playback of the presentation, simply refresh your browser, as this typically clears up most issues. And if the browser refresh doesn't solve that problem, you can type your issue into the Q&A area and we'll offer one-on-one assistance. And finally, toward the end of our webinar, we'll ask you to complete our survey. If you can, please take a minute to fill this out. Your feedback helps us improve future events. Now on to the presentation, MES Strategies for Empowering High-Skill Assembly Operators. Discussing today's topic from Velotic are Vikram Mankar, he's Principal Product Manager for MES, and Richard Porter, Discrete Industry Lead for EMEA. To learn more about them, you can check out their bios in the information widget found within the remote control. Now, before I hand it over to Richard, we have a short video to share with you to get things started.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining today. So as myself and Vikram have joined today, we'll be presenting to you. I will start the session and Vikram will take over a little bit further on when we talk about actually what we can do on the shop floor. So the title is Manufacturing Execution Strategies for Empowering High-Skill Assembly Operators. The agenda we have, what's my clicker? Is I'll give a few moments introduction to Velotic. You've just seen a video, but for most people in the audience, this will be a new brand to them because it is a brand new brand. It only came into existence in March. We'll talk about aerospace manufacturing challenges, particularly around workforce empowerment. We'll then talk about modern MES platforms and the key capabilities that will support those operations to move us forward. We'll talk a few takeaways and then we will have a short poll just to verify that maybe what we said to you resonated. Maybe there's some truth in it. Hopefully you'll agree. So quick introduction to Velotic. We're not going to labor the point here, but basically Velotic is a company that came together in March. We are the bringing together of three products sets called ThingWorx, Prophecy, and Kepware. There's a one single integrated portfolio. Interesting thing about these three product sets is that they have historically worked together. Kepware is a product that was white labeled through Prophecy, and ThingWorx is the top end connected worker dashboarding solution that has sat on top of Prophecy many times in the past. So they're not three independent product sets. So all three of them have got an existing footprint in aerospace, and together we provide a much greater breadth of solution for the marketplace. We're about 1,200 employees. Our turnover is about 350 million. We've got 8,000 active customers spreading over discrete, hybrid, and process. But today we are focusing on the discrete marketplace, and particularly aerospace. And as I mentioned, there are basically three layers to this complete portfolio. The middle is where we're focusing today around the operational systems, the shop floor, the work floor solutions. That's all around manufacturing execution, driving the materials and products through the manufacturing process, gathering data, making sure we do it right, making sure we schedule it right, just pushing things through the process. And at the same time, gathering the data so that we can do better things in terms of the IoT engine, in terms of analytics, in terms of applying AI, in terms of having those dashboards that allow us to understand how we can do things better. And the final slide on the company, because these three product sets have got a long history stretching back into 2000 and even before, these products have got a lot of history. We have got a very large footprint out there. Prophecy used to be part of GE, and GE Aerospace is one of our major customers. You've got international aerospace manufacturing there on the top left, people like Eaton on the top right, but also we've got experience in other industries that we can draw in here, other highly regulated processes such as pharmaceuticals. Okay, enough about our company. So aerospace manufacturing challenges and workflow empowerment. Typically, when we come and talk to a customer, we will look at their manufacturing process in terms of, on the left, their challenges. The challenges are typically being driven by corporate strategy, by business initiatives, operational issues, which are highlighted here because we're talking about operational activities, high skill assembly. These are the operational activities that are the focus for today. But there's market volatility. We're seeing a huge amount of impact in terms of what's happening in the world in terms of supply chain disruption. We're seeing increasing levels of regulation. In response to those challenges, you want to see certain functionalities, visibility, process improvement. These are things that you want to have in order to respond to those challenges. And we can then help you measure that in terms of value. But the focus for today is going to be on the operational issues and the outcomes that you want to see. So typical challenges. I'm going to quickly rush through these, but really we're thinking about the third one. We want to be able to satisfy our regulations, make sure we do things right, make sure we have the documentation that allows us to release the product to market. We want to manage those supply chains. We want to make sure the materials are being brought in at the right place. We want to manage the supply chain within the plant to make sure the material is flowing through the manufacturing process. One that keeps me, when I've been showing this slide, which I've been showing for about a year to various people, and they ask people typically, what's the one that's really hitting you at the moment? The one that keeps coming up again and again is talent and skilled labour shortages. This seems to be a really big hang up in the marketplace. People are struggling with many things, but labour seems to be a really big one on the shop floor. We want to handle material management, make sure the right material's there, so when somebody starts some work, the right material is there. At the same time, though, we want to minimise our work in progress. We want to be able to adjust the process, so when new products comes in, new customization, we can adjust quickly. We want to understand where our bottlenecks are, where our downtime is, where our quality issues is, so we can drive down our costs and be more efficient. And then the second to last one on this slide, limited insights from paper-based systems. That is an ongoing problem. Reality is aerospace manufacturing tends to lag other industries. There's a lot of paperwork, and that doesn't lend itself to having data available for analytics, for AI, in order to be able to improve our processes. As I said, we're focusing today on the talent and skilled labour shortages. The box on the right-hand side just gives some statistics. They're quite scary. So 29% of A&D employees are over 55 as of 2023. So 2 years later, they're now 57. That's PricewaterhouseCoopers. 33% of US A&D workforce is age 55 or older. In Europe, that's 20%. That's from McKinsey. 25% of the current workforce has 20 years of experience and is approaching retirement. So they're leaving. We're losing that skill set. And that's coming from Deloitte. So those three bullets, they just back each other up. And they're from independent different groups who've done independent different research. It's a problem. The last one is also a bit of a kicker. So at the same time as all of that, A&D attrition rate sits at 13%, which is nearly over three times the national average of 3.8%. So not only are we have all these skills leaving, but the people who are coming in are leaving as well. They're coming in and jumping out. How do we keep them? And then we look at what are our responses to that problem. We can try and technically gather that knowledge, capture it in some systems. That's part of what we do. So we retain that knowledge of the people who are receiving, and we augment the manufacturing process. The second point here is that we give people the tools that make their job more satisfying, make them more efficient. There's another statistic there. Deloitte said AI tools could assist with up to 36% of current workforce tasks. So the younger generation coming in, they expect to have those digitization tools, and that's something that we can try and provide. That makes employment more sticky. In addition, you've got things like apprenticeships that can draw people in. You've also got compensation. Unfortunately, pay isn't as high as it could be in other areas of business. Coming to my final few slides before handing over to Vikram. I nearly called you Mankar then, by the way. So as much as we're looking at that skilled labour shortage, the impact of not having those digital systems drives other problems. So current paper systems and those siloed systems, they don't enforce quality control and improvement as they could do. In addition, by having it on paper, having that view to see that we are perhaps drifting away from an optimal position isn't there because it's on paper. If you can capture, we can improve our quality, we can improve our compliance, we can verify everything is done to exactly the spec it should be. And then the two blocks at the bottom, cost management and efficiency, that again comes back to, do we have the data to understand where our bottlenecks are, where our downtime is, where our quality issues is? We can become more efficient and more productive if we have that information. And finally, the last one, as I mentioned before, aerospace does tend to lag the marketplace in terms of data gathering. We have lots and lots of data silos and lots of paper. So to have that common view that you can apply tools to, and analytical tools to, that you can apply AI techniques to, you've got to have the digital systems in place. And that final bullet on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, sorry, in the blue, 48% of aerospace and defense employees feel they lack the right digital tools and resources to do their jobs. That's another body called Aerospace and Manufacturing Design 2024. But it's that lack of tools that gets people frustrated, which means they move on from the business. And so we want to try and correct that. We want to make people enjoy their jobs more, have given them the tools that make them feel empowered and want to gather the information together and stay. Finally, this is my last slide, what do we actually want to achieve? With regards to regulation and quality, we want to comply with safety. We want tools that ensure that we do that with consistent quality and have the data available and the traceability available so we can improve things. We want to give a satisfying user experience. That means that people aren't frustrated with trying to deal with paper or trying to find a document or a specification. It's all presented there as standard work, error-proofed, easy to use front end. We want to provide the data then that allows us to have that observability, to continuously adapt, to continuously improve, optimize the process, understand where things are going wrong. And so that's my closing slide. That's the outcomes we want to do. And I'm now going to hand over to Vikram, and Vikram will explain actually how we do that in reality with our product sets. Over to you, Vikram.
Thanks, Richard. So again, if I have to recap, like going back to all the challenges you mentioned, right? The key here is, especially those in the community here who've seen these challenges, how do we solve them, right? That's really what we're talking about here. And the way we do that is using a manufacturing execution system as the foundation and the tool to drive those outcomes and those values that your challenges present today. So just to kind of go and look at a couple of these primary challenges that we see, right? For us, what we see in the industry, as some of the statistics that Richard pointed out, it's about workforce enablement and retaining that skill set that's going to leave the plant at some stage. You've got a high percentage of operators who are in their process of retiring, probably leaving due to attrition. So how do we solve that skill set gap that's coming into our community here? And really, that's where we talk about how an MES system from a value perspective really helps that. So if you think about efficiency, making sure that not only are you producing parts at the required rate, not only are you creating your finished product at the required rate, but with that rigor of quality and regulatory requirement that comes with our responsibilities as an aerospace and defense community. And so that's the key. And then that's where most of the tribal knowledge gets used is productivity, quality, and regulations. How do we manage all of those aspects? That's where you have those skilled operators today that have that in their heads and in themselves. How do we make that universally available for new skills coming into the plant? And that's really where having that modern MES system, having those tools, the digital tools to get that knowledge out and make that available to your incoming skills or your incoming workforce to utilize them at the same level as your most knowledgeable operator or your most skilled operator would be using. So workforce augmentation, right? And then there's this whole aspect around, now that I can do what I need to do, how do I get smart? How do I get more predictive in terms of what are the issues that I'm going to run into? And that's where analyzing data and doing that in that same environment, in that same digital environment is key. So we'll talk about these two key skill sets: is workforce enablement, augmenting that workforce, and then getting those smarts using AI tools. We'll talk a little about that, getting those two aspects together to get this sort of next generation operator with the right skills that they would normally have to wait for years for that experience to build up. So how do we do that with workforce enablement, getting those right skills, right? At the very basic, digital workflows. So we talk about having digital workforce combined with integration with your process control systems. So when we say digital workflows today, like Richard alluded to earlier, a lot of that knowledge, a lot of those tasks are on paper. It's usually a traveler with a set of work instructions, usually binders with the work instructions that go along with the process. And that's what a less trained or less skilled operator would be using versus a highly skilled operator who just knows, having done that repetitive work for years, can do it. So to get them on par, the easiest, the low-hanging fruit is digital workflows. And a lot of tools are available today. If you look at some of the tools that, for example, we provide, it's easy to convert digital manual workflows by simply scanning, using AI tools to scan them, to convert them into digital workflows, to actual digital forms. So they can be converted into forms where an operator can go checklist or enter data and get immediate feedback from the system saying whether that the step they perform or the value they recorded was in spec, within spec, and meets the regulatory requirements. So those are some basic low-hanging fruits around just converting those manual work instructions, so transferring paper to digital. And then with MES systems, the advantage you get is with all of this data available, I can now contextualize it into a quality view. Like I said, if these steps are being carried out and this data is being collected, whether manually or through a process or a machine, I can now start applying quality context to say, was that information within spec? I can apply SPC rules. Did I have 3 out of those 5 defects repeat themselves? Should I be doing more frequent quality testing? And then using the same information to develop rich quality information, like you see in some of these charts. I can now start looking at data and analyze it in different contextual formats. I can look at part families. I can look at it from a work order perspective. I can look at it from a very specific process perspective. So I may look at machining operations, maybe my foundry operations, compare those. So that's the beauty about using MES system to contextualize that simple paper to digital transformation that you've just done. And then, one of the screens there shows the genealogy, meaning I can now look at an end-to-end flow of information from raw materials to my finished part in a genealogy view that gives me all aspects of what happened with that operation, both from an execution perspective, from a quality perspective, and also from a regulatory perspective, whether I produced a part that was compliant. And the other thing that an MES system does is really brings data together. So whether I have data that's from my machining operations, manual data, whether it's data from my enterprise systems, I can bring them all together in a single view. And this is where AI kicks in, right? So if you have AI tools, like within Velotic, we've developed AI tools that allow us to layer agents on top of this data that start giving operators predictive information, that start giving operators information around certain patterns that we are tracking in the back end, giving operators recommendations on what they can potentially do to avert a potential issue in the future. So that's the beauty about bringing all this data in a common platform, and especially MES, given the rich context that you can apply, AI becomes more effective, becomes more something that an operator can trust versus simply coming up with hypotheticals based on data that it's seeing. That context becomes key for AI to provide that information, that inference that the operator can trust. And that's where having platforms that allow you to apply machine learning. So I have a lot of machining data, automated data. Can I build some machine learning around it that can make it more predictive, that gives me more information, some sort of a, we can look at tools that tell me when that machine's going to break down. So that's where these tools really enhance and make that experience for that, less skilled operator to start augmenting that and then bringing that operator to the same level as your most skilled and advanced operator. So that's the beauty about these tools, is having that in a common platform, having that context makes this really, really productive in terms of upskilling your operators. The other thing is a lot of these tools have built-in mechanisms for correcting the data as well. So for example, if I'm getting bad data from my machine, I can trigger alerts to a controls engineer saying, I've seen consistently bad data, maybe drive a workflow for that controls engineer to go fix a sensor or go fix that PLC code or go fix a machine code that needs to be addressed to fix the bad data coming in. So again, that's the advantage of having an MES system that has the smarts built in to upskill the operators and give them the tools to not only react, but take preventative action to stop any quality issues, to stop any issues from a regulatory perspective as well. With that, I'll transition over to Richard for a quick poll and some takeaways.
Thanks a lot, Vikram. Okay, so that's really the subject matter we really wanted to cover today. You now know a little bit about Velotic and what that bright orange background really means, the sort of things that we deliver. So if you're at an event or you see that bright orange, you know who you're looking at. So we have a couple of poll questions. See what people think. There's very easy questions. I just want to see whether this validates with what you're seeing in life, in your manufacturing life. So first question, are your manufacturing plants currently running mainly on paper, a blend of paper and digitization, or a fully automated MES? And I can see the poll coming through. I don't know how long they count for here. Maybe my Aviation Weekly people recommend this, but what we're seeing is at the moment nobody's gone for a fully automated MES, which is no great surprise. We've got a handful running mainly on paper, and then 93% on a blend of paper and digitization, which kind of reflects. So basically, when we look at our customers, most of them have got some level of digitization initiative. Most of them are doing something at the moment and have pockets of data and have those silos of information, but they're not connected together. They're not in an overall integrated architecture. So the answer, I possibly would have expected a little bit more running on paper, but that's kind of where I expected to see things. Probably means that people are making some headway, some progress here towards that digital utopia that we're looking for. Okay, I'll move on to the next poll at this stage. Thank you very much. The second one is, Do you, in actual fact, I've almost answered my own question here. Do you currently have initiatives to digitize or make better data-driven decisions in manufacturing? It's a pretty simplistic question. Let's see. I'm going to be very shocked if we get. Well, I'm not going to precursor the answer here. Oh, actually, that's interesting. At the moment, we've got 86 running on yes and 14 on no. (80-20). And I think I'll stop at this stage to let people have questions. So yeah, I'm actually surprised that there are some no's here. I thought there would be everybody would have some level of digitization, but we've got a few people here who their businesses do not have any initiatives to digitize, which is such a big driver that we're seeing in the marketplace. There's a few out there that will stick with what they've got. Still, vast majority are going with the yes on this stage. Okay, thank you very much. They did match with somewhat with what we expected to see. Maybe a little bit slightly different. So, final slide before we have a few minutes for Q&A. First challenge. So the takeaways. There's a challenge out there. The evidence is screaming from every piece of research that you see that workforce availability and skills and attrition is a big problem for A&D manufacturing, and legacy processes do not support either the operational excellence, having the data available to improve things, and at the same time don't drive job satisfaction for the new employees coming in, which causes more attrition problems. Strategies that we obviously advocate is that we need to empower people with modern tools. We need to capture the knowledge. We need to provide the data that allows further analysis and getting further into that AI world, so we can augment people to become better at what they do and take away the tedious side of the business. Platforms, obviously, we advocate the use of MES solutions. They can do that. They can drive the working structures. They can make sure the right information is with the right person at the right time to do their job to the best they can. Takes away the paperwork and provides a backbone for data that allows us to do AI. And finally, just contact us. If any of this resonates with this, please do reach out. We've got a proven solution here applied in several aviation companies. We'd love to hear from you. So if any of that resonates, please reach out to us. On the next slide, we've got a couple of we've got our details there, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Richard. I'll jump right in here. We got a time really for about one question, and I think this one is good for the particularly what you were just mentioning. You mentioned an application of AI a few times during the session. Could you give some real examples of what you've seen?
Sure, I'll start and then maybe Vikram can make comment. So first one is actually something that Vikram talked about. A lot of predictive maintenance, predictive quality applications out there. It's machine learning. It's the oldest type of AI really out there. We can create models based on machines like CNC machines. We've done several of these where we learn the process there. We can see when it's drifting from where it would be. We're not talking about passing a quality parameter. It's saying the whole thing's moving and you should go and look at this. So that's been quite successful. Similarly with quality, like weld seams, we're looking at temperatures and currents. We can generate quality predictions around that. So that's some of it. The other side would be around having data available, MCP. So being able to have that live conversation with the system, say, tell me where are the biggest downtime reasons? Give me a Pareto view of that. Tell me what the main reasons could be for these occurring. So that's sort of almost like a co-pilot for manufacturing. We provide a client there where you can ask questions and query that data without having to generate a report in the first place. It just does it for you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll take it a step in a different direction, more from a how do I get started in this journey as a manufacturing engineer, right? So the operator AI aspect is pretty, you've seen chatbots and so forth. What we are solving for use cases also are for the manufacturing engineer, where I can take plant diagrams, work instructions, convert them into models that my MES system can use. So you no longer have to sit in front of a screen and create your models. You can bring in work instructions, digital work instructions. You can bring in CAD diagrams that with the plant layout, and then use those to configure your MES system. So that's the kind of use cases and challenges you're solving, is not just the operator side, but how do I get quickly time to value? How do I get an MES system rolling out quickly for me, where, in some cases, configuration alone may take weeks, right? So those are some of the AI applications that we see that we are already working on.
Fantastic.
Great.
I'm conscious of time. Michael, I'll hand over to you just to close out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Richard. Before we sign off, I'd like to thank Vikram and Richard, as well as our sponsor, Velotic. Just as a reminder, any of the questions that you submitted, we'll make sure we get them to Vikram and Richard. They can respond offline if necessary. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to a replay of today's presentation. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues who aren't able to join us for today's live session. And with that, we again want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Aviation Week webinar.
Will do. Thank you very much.